I'm the landless farmer. I own 1 acre. Steve has grazed cattle for me in the past. He can put the most weight on animals of anybody that's ever grazed for me. Because of the Corsi genetics and because of Steve's pasture management, he had almost 3 pound a day gains on pasture, which, if you know about cattle, that's pretty good. So without further ado, Steve.
I'll sit in the hot seat. It's tough to make money in the farming business. So I had to find some shortcuts. So I tried to, as best I could, utilize what I knew and what I liked. So what I ended up doing was staying away from farm equipment. Part of my theory was, well, all it does is depreciate and fall apart. I don't like fixing it. And that saved a whole lot of money and time, which are two things that are tough to come by in the farming business. My story is kind of unique in that a lot of time farmers are directly from the farm. Now, I am from a generational farm, but I'm kind of one generation removed. The Saxton farm, which is up in Granville, has been there since before the Civil War. And I am a part of that because my dad was born. However, he moved off the farm, started out as a draftsman over the course of 17 years, became vice president of that company, and at the age of 43, he started his own business. And at that time, I was 16. So I was on the sidelines of somebody starting a business. And to me, that was very educational. Some of the observations I've made came from that direction. At the same time, all my life I wanted to be a farmer since I was a little kid. And so I spent a lot of time on the Saxton farm. I learned a lot of things from my grandfather and from my uncle. I get this thing from Mark, and he says I'm a pasture something or other. What was the phrase you used there?
Master of pasture management and rotation.
Okay, so there's just one comment I'm going to make about that, and this is something that impressed my wife, who, if you're married, you know it's sometimes hard to impress your wife. We have a house across the road from our farm, and we rent that out to people. And we had a new tenant coming. Part of their job was to make sure the property gets mowed, the lawn gets mowed. It was late in April, about the time that the pasture season begins. And there was grass there that was 6 inches tall, and next to it was grass that was just barely trying to come out of the ground. My wife said, well, that's totally impressive. I said, well, that's what rotational grazing is about. Traditionally, when people graze cattle, they put them out there in a field, and they do whatever they do. But what they really do is every time the grass begins to grow, they eat it off. Well, we bought a farm that had just 50 acres on it, which is small by farming standards. We milked 60 cows, but we only owned 50 acres. This is in 1990. I ended up going to a meeting where a guy from New Zealand was speaking about rotational pasture. And I kind of liked the idea of listening to what the man said, and we set up a grazing system. That's kind of my niche. The other nice thing about grazing is it doesn't take a lot of time. Once the cows are out there eating, you're not feeding them, you're not cleaning them, you're not handling their manure. And as several of you would mention, time is valuable. A couple of you have mentioned that your business has created a marital situation for you. Part of that is, and a lot of that is time. It's about time. That's always been something that's important to me with my family. I didn't want to destroy it. I wanted to encourage my family. And so the way we did business lend itself a little bit better to other opportunities besides 90 hours a week farming. I think it's important to do something you enjoy. You can find a job doing most anything, but if you enjoy it, you can make it your livelihood. The second thing I covered here was a healthy sense of self. It's good to know yourself, what your capacity is for work, what you are good at, what you're not good at, and be realistic about that. There are farmers, these guys have a capacity for work that's far beyond mine. They can work and work and work and work and just keep doing it. Understand your own capacity for those things is important, I think. One of my goals was to farm in such a way that my whole family was not tied to it. And I think I did a pretty good job at that. I ended up running around the country coaching soccer, which became a family thing for us. Figured I probably spent $250,000 doing that while my kids were growing up. But it was money that I'm glad to spend that way. And an important part of any business is to have a plan to get out of business. While I was in college, everything I read said that the dairy business is going to go down the drain. So I always conducted my business in such a way that if it went down the drain, I could get out. Once I had a good friend of mine who was a veterinarian say, you either need to get in this business or you need to get out of it. What she meant was I needed to expand. Well, I told him, look, I'm right where I want to be. And we were successful at farming. I mean, we ended up paying all of our bills off. We have a modest income. I don't have any near the money that Chris Moore has. Not a lot of farmers do. But we did it in such a way that I quit milking cows when I was 50. I made that decision early in life. And if my children were not interested in continuing with that business, I had milked enough cows by then. And my tax man said, well, I'm sure you'll be able to make that work. Well, I did. It worked out. Then we kind of shifted gears and went into raising heifers. And when they would have their calves, we would sell them to other people and let them milk. A lot less work, same income. Really no difference. And I kind of enjoyed it more because, again, more time. And then consider the worst case scenario. A lot of people jump into things, they don't really think them all the way through. They get to a place and they think, well, now we're really in a bad spot. What are we going to do? If you at least consider it and say, okay, am I willing, if this is what we do, if we go buy cows and they all die, can we live with that? That's the worst case thing. But you have to be able to deal with that. But you got to persevere. Things are bad. I think Jay talked about it. I've heard Chris say the same thing. Some days are not good. But you have to kind of keep on, make it happen. And then this is a motto to live by. It's an old saying. If your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. Very simple. Very simple. And somebody else mentioned about paying your bills. Yeah. It's basically your reputation in business. I have a friend, guy I do business with. He's 65 years old. He's a guy that could fix anything, make your furnace run, fix your plumbing, do your electric work. He's kind of decided at this point in life, there's some people I'm going to work for, and others I'm not. The ones he's working for, and I have to be one of them, is the people that pay him when he walks out the door. You know, he doesn't need the grief going to fight your bills. And just plan on paying your bills. Don't plan on somebody else carrying it. And last but not least, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I have an example of that that's kind of unique. When I started in the heifer raising business, I had a man call and wanted to buy heifers. And he said, just send them to me. We did business that way for 10 years. I'd never met him. But if I did unto him, if I sent him a good cow, we were going to continue to do business. So I sent him some dog, I think we were done. And That's the practical side of the golden rule. I met him 10 years later, and because I wanted it all cattle for him. I had a heart attack, and I had to take some soy. And he said, didn't know what I was going to see when you got here, but we've done business almost 20 years now. I probably sold him between 300 and 400 cattle. Because he treats me right and I treat him right, we get along real well. The other day I said, well, I got so many this year. How's that going to work for you? Well, that'll be all right, he said. We'll work it out. So that's a rare thing. And I don't use his name because I don't want people to know who he is. We keep our business private. But if you can do business with people that way, things go real well all the way around. Those are the important things, I think.